Good morning, everyone. It is my great honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Barry Kerzin, who is a professor and medical doctor. He is a faculty member of the Mind and Life Institute and consults for the Max Planck Institute Leipzig's research on training compassion. Dr. Kirsten is a full-ordained Buddhist monk. His brain was studied as part of research on long-term meditators at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and Princeton University. He is founding chairperson of the Human Values Institute in Japan and the founding president of the Altruism in Medicine Institute in the US. Dr. Kirsten received his BA from UC Berkeley in philosophy and his MD from USC School of Medicine. He completed his medical residency in family medicine at the Ventura County Medical Center. He was an assistant professor at the University of Washington School of Medicine and a visiting professor at the Central University of Tibetan Studies in India. Dr. Kirsten spends about 7 months annually teaching around the world in Hong Kong, Japan, Taiwan, Korea, Malaysia, North America, Europe, Mongolia, Ukraine, and Russia, mostly in universities on the interface of modern science and Buddhist psychology and philosophy, ethics, compassion, and death and dying. He is currently a visiting professor at our university and has delivered a lot of talks in Philadelphia and Taipei as well. He has written Buddhist Prescription for Happiness in Japanese, which is now being translated into English and Chinese. Many articles, interviews, and documentaries from many countries have been written and filmed about him. I now pass the floor to Dr. Kirsten, and I'm pretty sure we will all learn a lot of things about training compassion after this workshop. Dr. Kirsten, please.
A very accurate introduction. Often it doesn't happen, but she was just right on target, right on point. Thank you. What I really wanted to do today is kind of interact with you. I didn't bring slides. Almost always I'm having PowerPoint slides, but I thought, that's not really what we're doing here today. What your department chair, Cecilia Chan, asked me was to have a conversation, a discussion with you all who are interested in doing social science research on kind of future directions, okay? The actual words were something like this. There's an old movie which is, if it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium. You know that movie? You've heard of it? I see a few people smiling. It means, when Americans go on a trip for 7 days to Europe and visit maybe 10 countries, they have no idea where they are. They have to look on their program. Maybe that's Tuesday, it must be Belgium. So this is what kind of was highlighted. I'll read it to you. I think you've all seen it. The seminar aims to share ideas and future direction in social science research regarding training compassion and a brief outline of the compassion family. So I'm going to actually spend time talking a little bit about the compassion family, in the context of future research, okay? And I'll explain that in just a couple of minutes. And approaches to training compassion, including honesty, integrity, gratitude, forgiveness, love. These are some of the family members. Okay. The registrants, so I'm told that people are coming from postgraduate, most of you are postgraduate students, and from arts, education, medicine, and social sciences. So let me make a few comments, and then I really want to spend most of the 2 hours talking with you. Okay? We'll have a discussion. You ask questions, I might ask questions, and we'll kind of get a flavor of what your interests are, where your work areas are, and what you're thinking about in the research for the future. Now, I'm not a panacea. I don't have all the answers. In fact, I probably have very few answers. Okay, so don't expect that from me, okay? But what we'll do is we'll open it up, and we'll explore together. And that's really the nature of education, okay? So explore together. Okay. So let me start with training compassion. Okay, some of you may be aware that there's a lot of work now being done in how do you train folks to become more compassionate. Some people say, well, either you have it or you don't, and you can't really train it. Okay, that's a common view many people hold. And there may be some truth to that, okay? It may be related to our family, our upbringing. Who knows if there's a genetic component or not? We don't know, okay? But there's now a lot of work showing that short-term interventions can change people's behavior in a more compassionate way, at least for the relatively short term, maybe 3 months, maybe 1 year, okay? Studies that go out a lot further than that, I think are being carried out. I haven't seen data on that. So I think it is, we can train people, okay, to be more compassionate, to act more compassionately. Whether or not they feel it inside, that's maybe not always the same. But in some ways doesn't make a difference, okay? In terms of if the behavior is compassion, helping others, is kindness, okay? That's beneficial. If the person doesn't feel it, then the person a little bit loses out. Because usually compassion is a win-win situation. Okay, if we're helping someone and we're skillful, we're not always skillful, but if we're skillful, the other person will benefit. Okay? At the same time, we will benefit. You all know that. When we help someone, we feel good. Okay? So there may be some people that don't feel that, okay, that feel well and acting compassionate. So they're not in a win-win situation, they're just in a single win situation for others. That's okay. Okay? It's a stepping stone. Okay. The work in Leipzig with the Max Planck Institute is looking at a 2-week intervention, primarily a 2-week intervention. And there's been work at the University of Wisconsin-Madison also looking at short-term, sometimes even 3-day intervention. Okay. There's been work on young children that are age 2 and 3, showing that they naturally exhibit kind of a compassion and kindness kind of behavior, given the proper situation. That's good quality research. Okay, let me mention, so I'm throwing a few ideas out, okay? Let me mention the family here. And the family, mainly the concept here is actually, it's not actually a family. It's more a concept of we could say, okay, it's the things that block compassion. Okay. So this is more the indirect route to training compassion, is to relieve some of the blockage. Okay. And the blockage is primarily self stuff, It's self-cherishing, selfishness. Those things kind of block us from thinking about and acting in a positive way towards others. Compassion, by definition, is the relief of suffering. Okay? And we often divide it from a Buddhist perspective into 2 levels. One is the aspiration, the wish. I wish I could help that person, but I don't know what to do. Okay? That's good stuff. Okay? Because it trains us. It trains us to have that thought more often, and when we're able to do something, we have the skillful means, then we go ahead and do it. So it's very good training for us just to have the thought, the wish, or the aspiration to help relieve suffering. Okay? The next level is to put it into action. Do something about it. Okay? And that's not always easy. The King of Jordan is now facing that issue. Right? Not always easy. Try to negotiate. It turns out that the terms were probably dishonest because the pilot was killed in January. Okay? But he, it seems, according to the press, I don't know, in good faith, was trying to negotiate so that he could get his pilot back and not be killed. Okay? But he didn't have the skillful means to do it. Now what's happening is it looks like he's joining the gang, and they're going after IS in a very violent way. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm just saying he didn't have the skillful means. So we're often in that situation when we don't have the skillful means. We would like to help, we don't know what to do. Or we put our foot in our mouth. Anybody ever put their foot in their mouth? You know the expression? Do we have that in Chinese? It means you try to do something with good intention and it backfires. What's the expression in Chinese?
弄好防止。
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it kind of backfires. It doesn't work. You have good intention, but it doesn't work, and it kind of backfires. The person says, how dare you try to help me? Right? So that happens sometimes. It's okay, no problem. You back up, sorry. And inside you know that you tried, you did your best, you had good motivation. And so no guilt. There's no word for guilt in Tibetan language. And Tibetan language grew out of Buddhism as English grew out of Christianity. Okay? In Buddhism, there's no concept for guilt. No concept for guilt. So when we, I can't pronounce it, but give me the expression again, please.
弄好防止.
No how function. You kind of make us mistake. With good intention, we don't do it properly. Okay? We don't beat ourselves up. We don't feel I'm a bad person. Okay? Just, okay, I made a mistake. Well, keep trying to do it better next time. So regret is the concept in Buddhism, without guilt. You recognize you made a mistake, you regret it, I'm sorry I did it, but I don't beat myself up. I don't say I'm a bad person as a result. I just say, okay, I'm going to look for other, skillful means next time in this kind of situation to try to do it better. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about some of these blocks. So the first one is anger. Everybody here in this room gets angry sometimes. I know it. Am I wrong? Raise your hand if I'm wrong. Anybody never get angry? Sometimes there's a hand, but not very often. I get angry sometimes. Not much. Much less than I did when I was younger. Much, much less. But and I can usually, if it does come, I can feel it. I know the early signs of it, okay? So I can often intervene. And it is fairly rare. I just don't see getting angry so much. Very little. But it happens. Okay? So anger management. What do we do about anger management? Your dean knows about this. He actually can talk better than me, I think. First is to recognize it early. Once it's hot, red hot, blowing, and you're yelling and screaming, maybe you're not doing it on the outside, but on the inside you're yelling and screaming. Either way. Okay, red hot. It's too late. You can't really do much. So what you really have to do is identify that before it gets full blown. You just have to start looking inside. Recognize situations or people that that you know from your history, you get angry. So when you're in those situations or with those people, you say to yourself, a little red flag goes up. No disrespect to Chairman Mao. A little red flag goes up. And the red flag says, oh, I'm in this situation where I've been before and I got angry before. So look out. Be careful. Okay? Be very careful. Furthermore, I'm going to start, making some, what's the word? Making some, preparations. If in fact this is anger, I'm going to start preparing for it. Okay? So what I'm going to do, what I often do, there are many different techniques. This is one common one, and I think it's a wonderful research question, by the way. I'm trying to contextualize everything to research questions. Okay? Anger management is to immediately say to myself, that other person is not happy. Okay? This becomes like a mantra for me. I learned automatically. When I'm in a situation with another person, I feel a little irritated, I'm a little out of balance inside. And I go, I get angry. This situation is brought in anger before. I prepare. I think that other person is not happy. And then I say to myself, why are they not happy? Well, what happened? They had a fight with their girlfriend, their boyfriend, their husband, their kid, their parent, whatever. Relationship difficulties, economic difficulties. In the pocketbook, and they didn't have what they thought they had. They didn't buy a new car or whatever. Okay. Health issues, or worse, economic. Maybe they lost their job or something. Health issues. They have this pain. They're worried about. They have an appointment for next week. The doctor is not sure. They're worried. So they're a little upset. They're out of balance. They're off center. And boom, it just unloaded. Whoever comes in the way, it just unloaded. So I think that way. And just thinking that way takes at least a few seconds, or longer. It kind of derails that incipient feeling of anger. It kind of just, takes your mind and your heart somewhere else. So it just leaves it out in the cold, so to speak. It doesn't grow, it doesn't develop into anger. Now, this doesn't happen the first time you do this, usually. Okay, you have to practice that because anger is very tricky. It finds ways to get around. Well, our ego is very tricky. But these things work, and I think they're researchable. That's, I think, really a good area that I don't know if other people are doing it. I haven't seen it, but I'm not the best one yet to do a literature research. But as far as I know, it's not being researched. It's a good area. Because it works. I think it works, and that's from personal experience also. Okay, it works. Okay, another area is jealousy. Jealousy. I suspect everybody here gets jealous sometimes. I won't embarrass you. We all get jealous sometimes. And I think part of getting jealous is also insecurity. We don't feel so well about ourselves this day, that particular day. And then when something happens very successful, the other person gets, their PhD degree with honors. And you say, oh, no. And you get jealous of that person because it makes you feel less. Okay? It makes you feel more insecure, less intelligent, or successful as a researcher, as an academic. So insecurity often comes into this jealousy. And jealousy closes our heart. We feel closed down when we get jealous. So what we can learn to do is the opposite. Feel happy when good things happen to other people. Okay? So I'd like to give the example of somebody driving down the street in a fancy red car. Maybe, I think I saw a Lotus the other day. Are there Lotuses here? People are driving Lotus cars and fancy race car things. And walked down. Maybe it was a Lotus. I don't know cars so well. But it drove by me. And I thought, wow, what a beautiful car. So if you can think that not only a beautiful car, but how lucky that person is to have such a wonderful car. It's really nice that they've been able to be successful economically. I hope they didn't steal it. They actually bought it. And then if you have that attitude, then it kind of snowballs in your favor. If it's a neighbor, for example, parks a car right in front of your house, maybe to annoy you a little bit, maybe that was the only parking spot. And you see it, and you realize it's your neighbor. You knock on the door, and you say, congratulations, great car. So what's he likely going to say to you? Want to have a drive? So you get to enjoy the car without monthly payments. So rejoicing, the opposite of feeling jealous. It makes you feel good. Now, you don't have to tell the other person. Okay? Also with the anger management, it can be private stuff. You don't have to communicate it. You have to use skillful means, whether or not that's helpful in the situation or not. Okay? But basically what you're trying to do is clear out some of the junk that we all have to open our hearts more naturally to love and compassion. Okay, a third one is pride or arrogance. And I think being in the academic environment, we all feel that sometimes. Because sometimes we feel not so good about ourselves, other times we feel we're Superman, really smart. Someone says, wow, that was a great paper you wrote. You think, wow, I'm so good. I'm better than others. We all have that feeling sometimes, I think. Sometimes we have that a lot of the time. Okay? That closes us off from others. Nobody likes someone who's arrogant, because arrogance puts other people down. And no one likes to feel put down. None of us like to feel put down. Okay? So remember, when we're feeling that pride or arrogance, how the other person's feeling. They don't like us. They don't like to feel put down. So arrogance tends to wall us off emotionally and physically from others. They don't want to be around us. Now, if we have all the purse strings, they'll be around us trying to get some of the money, for example. Okay? But not genuine friendship. Okay? They have an ulterior motive. They have some power or wealth or something they want. Okay? They need to be around us. But when we don't have those things, they're gone. It's not genuine friendship. Okay? There's not a mutual trusting relationship. So arrogance blocks those kind of mutually trusting relationships, friendships. So we don't want that. We are social beings. We want genuine friendships. We want good relationships with our partner. We want good relationships with our children and our parents and our colleagues. So if we are arrogant, it just really destroys that potential. So I just think that way when I feel a little bit like I'm better than others. I think, how is the other person interpreting this? They don't like me put down. Kind of getting the message that they're less. They're so. And when I think that way, I say, ooh, that's not really where I'm trying to move my life. I don't like that. So I'm going to try to let go. I'm going to say bye-bye to that feeling of that mental state of arrogance. Okay, so those are a few ideas just to throw out. There are other obstacles we could talk about if you're interested. Things like just selfishness itself, just always me. And trying to learn, this is almost a cognitive, behavioral kind of approach, to replace that self-cherishing me, with concern for the welfare of others. And actually that has a double-edged sword, okay? Because when we think about concern, we have concern for the welfare of others, actually we gain a lot. Okay? We don't think that way usually. Usually we think, okay, well, for me, all this stuff for me. But doing that kind of makes us more narrow. It kind of closes us rather than opens us. So that's another area we can discuss. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. I've talked for almost a half hour, maybe 20, 25 minutes. And let's kind of just throw out some ideas and, very informal. This is not, no one's getting a grade here. I mean, your boss is here, but he's in a very friendly mood this morning. I know that. So don't worry about him, okay? And just, if you have some ideas, or you have some questions, if there's confusion, please feel relaxed and, enough to just throw it out. And we'll just discuss it. There's no right or wrong in here, okay? Please, yes, please.
Can I ask, my name is Janice.
Hi,
Can I ask you a
Janice.
question about self-compassion?
Self-compassion,
Yeah,
of course.
it's easy to feel, not pity, but compassion to other people, or feel sad about other people. But for oneself, usually it's harsh.
Harsh, yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. Often we're harsh and hard on ourselves. So, this notion of self-compassion, I'm not a big proponent of that. I think it's good stuff. But if it gets us too much into only self-compassion and not compassion for others, then I think again it comes back to being more limited. But if it's put in a context of compassion to others also, then I think it's very rich and valuable. Very much so. And there are a number of people that I think out of tremendous periods of pain in their life, and I know some of the people that are writing about this, they write about self-compassion, and it's helped them a lot. But we have to be a little careful not to just stop there.
But do you think it's a prerequisite for compassion for others?
No, I don't think so. No. Some people say that. I know I've seen it. I've talked to them. I've been on panels with them. And I've seen it written. I don't think it's a precursor. That self-compassion is a precursor to compassion for others. I don't think so. Because when we talk about others, we're included. It's not that we're excluded when we talk about compassion for others. But it makes it more realistic. So in a sense, it's Marxian Maoist. It's an Marxian Maoist. Chairman Mao, Karl Marx. Okay? It kind of equalizes. Okay? There's so many of us living, we're one of them. But normally, we feel like we're the only one. And we forget about the other 7 billion humans and so many animals, right? So this kind of equalizes it. Okay? I had an interview with one of the major newspapers last night at BBC, and there's some stuff in the news that had my name attached to it, I don't know. So there's no journalists there, I think, so please don't quote me about Chairman Mao. I'm in trouble. I'm using it in a positive way to show equalizing. We're 7 billion people. And to think that I'm the only one that matters, that counts, it's very unrealistic. We have to think about everyone, okay? But we're included in that, so we're not left out. So I approach compassion more in that way. I think it's cleaner, if you will, but we definitely have to take care of ourselves. Definitely. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, we don't have a foundation or a basis to help others. So we need good physical health. We have to take care of our physical health, our nutrition, our exercise, our yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, all that stuff. Right? And then our mental health, through meditation, and these, trying to make our thoughts and feelings and emotions turn more in a positive direction. Okay? So I think all that's important.
May I have a follow-up question?
Please, please.
Are there any prerequisites for someone to be compassionate? Or as you said, it's inborn, like 2-3 years old already have the concept, or do they just model their parents?
Right. Yeah, I don't know if there's actually prerequisites, but I think the idea I agree with. They're little steps, okay? And a lot of those little steps are trying to work on the blocks that I kind of mentioned, okay? Try to loosen those and eventually lessen the blocks. And then naturally compassion comes forward, okay? So the assumption here is that we do have natural compassion. That's the assumption, that's correct. We're naturally good people. Even, Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and those people that ended up, their regimes killed lots of people. Deep down inside, they have goodness. Okay? Sometimes that's hard for people to understand. I believe that. Please, John.
I think like most of people who identify with everything you're mentioning, but what I find challenging is how do you take these ideals into like real changes in people, like from taking them as an ideal or as a way of life to applying them in their own life, like from what your experience, like what kind of mechanisms or ways is it to taking these ideals into a real change in people's life?
Right, it's a wonderful question, and in a way it's the important question, because that's what we're talking about, is making changes in our, positive changes in our lives at a very practical level. I think these things that I talked about so far takes time. That's the thing. You see, we have these ingrained habits. Most of us are at least 20 years old. Some of us are 30. A couple of us are a little older than 30. We've been doing it for that many decades. Okay? So it's ingrained. Some of these negative habits that are limited rather than expansive. Open our hearts to close. So to overturn those, you don't do them in a day or a week or even 2 weeks. So these training compassion things, I think their effects are limited. Something can be shown, some improvement in positive compassionate behavior, but it's certainly just the first step. It's not the full story. Meditation I think is very, very important, but I don't think I've mentioned it so far. It's very important. It doesn't help us in a week or two. Maybe even in a few months, not much change will you see. You might not. You have to stay with it. I've been doing it for, seriously, I guess, over 30 years now. And I definitely see changes. I have for some time. But you don't have to do 3-year retreats. You don't, because we don't have time. We don't have interest in that. Just even a simple daily meditation. After some time, months, maybe a year, I don't know, it'll change. Different for different people. You'll see something different. You'll be more calm inside. You'll have more healthy self-confidence. Not putting yourself and not putting others down. You'll be more kind, compassionate. You'll be a little soft in situations. You won't have that edge, that hard edge we sometimes have being rushed or stressed. We have a hard edge on ourselves and on others. That starts to soften. Definitely happens. It takes time. This is more of a lifetime program. It's not a one semester program. So what's happening now is that this stuff is entering the educational systems in some countries. So it's been put in the curriculum, and now kindergarten and on up, they're being exposed to some of these things. Nonviolent conflict resolution, some kind of a mindfulness, simple meditation, which is kind of the mind, some kinds of little bit simple yoga for the body, to quiet the body a little bit. Things like this, rather than jealousy and anger, other tools to work with feelings, emotions. So this is now starting to come into the schools. So, as kids grow up with this stuff as part of their curriculum, it will be more accessible. It'll have more of a practical familiarity and read that didn't grow up with it most of us. Please.
Thank you so much for sharing. Just now, when I listened to your sharing on compassion, I think that as far as I understand it, it means to take elements of others' voices into our subjectivity. But then, because some people, human beings are not always very rational, that they can be emotional sometimes. They may be very much locked up in their own value system or symbolic order, which may lead to social conflict sometimes. So, in your view, how would you get people into dialogues and sometimes maybe non-coercively rearrange others' value systems, so that people can actually communicate?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, and it's very important in this part of the world. Difficult. I'm not sure I would tackle that much, personally. I would do it step by step, person by person, and not try to challenge their value systems, but respect them. No, it doesn't mean I have to agree with them. I respect them. Because then I think we have a more clean relationship. I respect your value systems. But at the same time, if I feel that some of the things you're doing are irrational based on superstition, it depends on my relationship with that person. If I'm a teacher and they've come to me for advice, then I'll offer. Okay. If I'm in a relationship like a husband-wife, like a broken relationship, where you start to share emotional intimacy, then I think it's fair to bring it up as you have to do it two ways. If you're going to bring something up that might get uncomfortable for them, you have to allow them to do the same thing with you. Okay? Then it's clean. Otherwise, I think it's too almost provocative. So it's almost hurting the other person. Could be seen that way. So I think what you raised, part of the question is skillful means. How do we do this? And that's always kind of a $64,000 question. There used to be a game show. It comes from America. And at that time, this was probably the 1970s or 60s or something. And at that time, $64,000 was a lot of money. Today, we talk about billionaires, right? So $64,000 doesn't seem like much. That was a lot of money. It was a game show, a quiz show, right? You'd be asked questions and it would be a pure perennial thing. People would be lost, you'd be out. And finally, they get down to the last two people, and they would go, dun, 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 and then they wait for the answer, right? Your time limit. So that's the $64,000 question, is skillful means. Okay? And I don't know, there's not an easy way for that. Education plays a part, trial and error plays a part, intuition plays a part. I think many of you have intuition, yes? Sometimes you have a little intuition. My sister does not. Yeah. We're not always right with our intuition, sometimes we are. So I like to bring intuition into the equation as one of the factors in making a decision on skillful means. Yeah, I feel that this is going to be helpful. Okay? If we always act on that and nothing else, we're going to be wrong sometimes. Okay? So we also have to be rational. What seems to be best, and we make a decision. And when we're wrong, okay, with this person with this strict set of value system that's kind of superstition, not rational, maybe blocks their ability to be more compassionate. If we challenge too much, it can backfire. Okay, so we have to be very careful. And I think respect is important. We should really respect their system, their environment that they grew up in, why they're not like they are. As much as we can understand that. And then try to work with that. And then I think they will be more receptive. If we kind of go in and say your value system is wrong, you're irrational, you're superstitious, why don't you get with the program? They're going to walk away, or worse, they're going to punch you in the face. So skillful means is very important. It's one of the more difficult things to do. It comes with maturity, comes with trial and error. I said these things, with education, with developing a mutual respect relationship. Then things are a lot easier. When someone respects us, then trust is just around the corner. When we have that mutual trusting relationship, we do a lot. So these things require a genuine motivation, not to harm or to get something, clean, pure, if you will, and a sense of equality. A sense of equality. I mean, okay, in some ways, I have a PhD, you haven't graduated from college, I have this big car, you're still driving a horse, or whatever. We can say we're better, but in some ways we're all equal. On the stuff we're talking about, we're all equal. Everybody wants to be. Nobody wants to hurt. Okay? Regardless if you're a billionaire or living in the street, all the same that way. And so to remember that sense of kind of that commonness that we share as human beings, and also as animals. Okay? That helps make the stage, sets the stage cleaner, I think, for this kind of dialogue. It doesn't answer the question. These are what you bring up are tough stuff to deal with, not easy. But I think if we come at it with that approach, then we can get more out to work that. Please.
Okay.
Yes.
Professor Kerzin?
Yes.
Thank you so much. In the Chinese Buddhist community,
Yes.
We tend to consider compassion as one of the components of the four immeasurables. And here we tend to, consider, we should pursue the four qualities together. So there is a common belief here that if we pursue just one of them, for example, compassion, but ignore the other the other three qualities, there could be a dark side. For instance, sometimes we may observe, some people, if they just pursue for compassion, their behavior may be a little bit just ritualistic, or in some really rare but extreme cases, somewhat like obsessive compulsive. Do you have any view on these arguments?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a wonderful area of discussion. In general, when we talk about Buddhism, we talk about the great soaring white bird. Somehow white somehow denotes purity. Yeah. And the two wings are wisdom and compassion. So we often say that these two are the most important essential ingredients. So I agree with you. Just being compassionate, sometimes the bird may not fly. Okay. So really to transform and become better human beings, we need wisdom. And I didn't bring that up much because it's not an easy subject. And this is not quite a Buddhist class, but I'll just say a couple words about that. And I'll say particularly how it relates to compassion, because the two are actually very close in meaning. I'll explain that. So wisdom from a Buddhist perspective is, just like the question that the quantum physicists ask on the micro world, the nano world, okay, nanometer world, much less than a millimeter in this tiny subatomic world. They ask the question, what's real? What is reality? Okay. And there was a famous quantum physicist by the name of David Bohm, who died a few years ago. He was a very close personal friend of Mr. Dalai. And David Bohm, who was not religious, he was not Buddhist, he was not religious, he was a scientist. David Bohm said, there is no objective reality. Quote unquote. There is no objective reality. Wow. If you really look at that statement, it's quite something. Well, aren't I sitting in an objective solid chair? If I wasn't, I'd be falling. If there was no floor that's solid and objective, where am I going? And if there's no body that's solid and objective, maybe I'm floating up. Right? So that's what he said, no objective reality. But then he said, there are only events and processes, meaning that everything is in relationship. Nothing is kind of solid and independent or isolated. And normally, when we think about it, we say, of course, everything's in relationship. But if we look at how we react to things before we start thinking about it, we think that the chair, the table, my body, everything, the floor, everything, we think it's kind of solid and it's kind of, it's there by itself. We don't see it in a causal nexus. Somebody hammering the nails and polishing the thing and, weaving the carpet and laying the carpet. We don't see it in that, all those aspects. When we just look normally, when we think about it, the way we react is just a carpet, just some flooring, etc. It's there kind of independent of my mind. But actually the floor, the carpet, my body, everything, just concepts, things from my mind. Okay? So that no objective reality that David Bohm said is very similar to the Buddhist understanding of wisdom, shunyata, emptiness. Very similar. Okay, how do we relate that to compassion? Okay, we talk about compassion, as I said earlier, is the relief of suffering. Okay, the wish and then the engagement, doing it, action. Okay, relieving suffering. So what is suffering? So from the Buddhist concept, there's 3 levels of suffering. There's obvious suffering, okay, which we all know in our lives and those around us. Physical pain, mental pain. Okay? Then there's a little deeper level, which we call impermanence, change. It's like going to the beach, having a great day, laying out, falling asleep, coming home at night, waking up at 2 in the morning with this terribly pain sunburn. So that pleasure at the beach turned into something painful. Or a buffet, I like this example. You go out with friends, $10 all you can eat. Okay, used to be $10, now I'm sure it's a lot more. And you fill up your plate, can't see the plate anymore, it's just all food. Eat it with friends and feel full. Friends say, let's go get another round. And then after that, desserts. You go home, you have a big bellyache. So pleasure, good food, cheap price, a lot of food, buffet, turns into tummy ache. So that's another level where pleasure often, not always, it'll often turn into the opposite pain. And if it doesn't do that, what it does is it finishes. Pleasure doesn't last. At some point it finishes. Okay? So we might grieve the loss of the pleasure. So that way we turn into something. Then the deepest level of suffering we call conditioned or all-pervasive. Okay? It's kind of, it's the framework, it's the sort of, looking for a good German word, I don't have it right now. It underlies everything we do, we think, everything. And that's what we call ignorance. It's a kind of distorted ignorance, and it's relative to reality. We don't see ourselves correctly. Our view of ourselves is mistaken. Our view of the table is mistaken as something independent, solid, not related to my mind, not understanding that it's just a concept. Okay? And on that level, what's the best way to and that level of suffering, it said, fuels all the other levels of suffering. That change and that kind of manifest suffering of normal, physical and mental pain. So that fuels it all. So how do we overturn that? What's the opposite of that kind of distorted ignorance? It's wisdom. It's the wisdom to see things correctly, like David Bohm, like the quantum physicists. To see things as in relationship. And if we see things in relationship, we no longer cut off from others and see us and them. All that's artificial. It's not correct. Okay? But when we see things more, everything being in relationship, then there's no kind of me and them. We don't cut off anymore. We're all together. We're not one, we're together. We're closely tied. And we actually begin to feel that if we think this way more and more. And I tell people to be careful, because when they go into the MTR at rush hour, if you start doing this practice for a while, you'll start hugging them. And then they'll take you away. Somebody will be crazy or something. So I don't know if I got to your question, which was quite a deep question, but that's how I kind of wanted to answer or discuss that a little bit. Thank you. Jim, please.
Yeah, I have two quick, but there are some other. I'm going to just ask one, but could you talk a little bit about, because I've heard you refer before to this person at UW-Madison and that institute, but talk a little bit about the research they're conducting there to sort of put that in the context of this discussion.
Great. The boss is Richard Davidson, Professor Dr. Richard Davidson. And he has the Wiseman Center. I think they have over 100 scientists there. His funding funds all of that. It's a huge thing. The University of Wisconsin-Madison is next to the medical school, geographically, physically. And Richie is by training a psychologist, PhD psychologist by training. Was offered a position years ago at Harvard, trained at Harvard, and was, I think, undergraduate or graduate, sure, trained at Harvard, and was offered a position there, which he declined a number of years ago. He thought that what he was doing in Madison, even though it didn't have the prestige of Harvard, they were doing incredible work and an incredible network to help a lot of that work. So he stayed in Madison. Richie, almost every day when he's not traveling, is maybe 30, 40, 50 miles on his bicycle. He's really in great shape. Physically, he meditates. I don't know Richie's age. He's a little older than me. He might be in somewhere in his 50s. Maybe getting out of his 50s. So his work a lot was in autism years ago. Did a lot of work in autism. And had an interest in this meditation stuff. And there had been a lot of work with meditation in the 1970s. I don't have a slide, but a good slide for this. There's a lot of work researching meditation in the transcendental meditation tradition. And unfortunately, that was done in the 1970s. And unfortunately, the quality of that research was not so good. Okay? And it did not get published in top-level peer-reviewed journals, as the current stuff from Wisconsin and elsewhere, as I'll tell you about, is being published many times in PNAS and the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences and Nature of Science. That's journals, peer-reviewed journals. Let's see what's going on over there. So Richie started doing work in autism, a lot of work in autism years ago. Got interested in the meditation stuff. But then he saw that what was done was poor quality, and so the reputation within his research community at large, neuroscience research, was that research in meditation, is not where you want to go. You won't get funding, you won't get credibility, you won't get promoted, etc. if you do research in meditation. But Richie had established quite a good reputation in autism, doing work in autism. And he decided that, he took the leap. He was one of the first ones on a big way to really do this. Took the leap to do it. And he developed a great team. One of whom was a good friend of, Richie's a good friend of mine, as in Antoine Lutz, L-U-T-Z, who was with Richie a long time, and now I think went back to France, not based in France. He's still doing work with Wisconsin, but based in France. And then other younger people, a lot of PhD candidate people working with him. Helen, she's Chinese origin, I forget, is it Wong? I'm sorry, I forget her last name. She's doing some incredible work there, and I think now she has her PhD, but that was before she had her PhD. Helen, science, I don't remember her last name. And there's a whole team, there's a huge team there working. So they decided to, do this, and one of the first projects they tackled was, what happens to the brains of long-term meditators? By definition, 10,000 hours, many 50, 60,000 hours of meditation experience. Okay? They studied about 11 people, and then that research was, and all the good statistical and analyses was done by Richie, of course, but by Antoine Lutz, and it was a genius. And that stuff was published in PNAS, and then repeatedly. They collected lots of data, and they had many articles, PNAS and other journals. And so then people started to say, no, this is baloney, this is crazy, this is bad stuff. You can't do research in meditation. It doesn't work. And they couldn't poke holes. It was good research and got accepted to these journals. They hired a guy who's since, I think, died, a physicist, who was a naysayer. He said, meditation's junk, I don't believe in it at all. It's not healthy, it's no good, it's just hocus pocus superstition. Okay. Academic, well respected in physics. As an ace, he joined the team, which he hired. Very smart. Subsequently, he had health issues. I think he may have died. But he was there to help kind of give them critique, and so they brought him on the team. So I think that's a lot of what they've done. Since then, they've been going into the area of compassion. I mentioned it. Did I mention here the 2-3-year-old kids? I think I mentioned that. That naturally go to compassionate situations. That's the work from Richie Slack, from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. They have a school there. I think the parents are, I'm not sure it's required. I'm not sure most of the your students or professors or whatever, your kids go to that school. It's kind of on campus or nearby. And so they use a lot of those kids in the research.
That's good, that's helpful.
Yeah, let's just go back up. Yes, please.
Thanks for sharing. And you just mentioned that to deal with our blocks to compassion, we can consider others, people's feelings. But I'm thinking if I think that others feel bad because I just get angry, so I may feel guilty also. So I'm wondering, for those people, particularly lack of self-compassion or highly self-critical, will they have difficulties by thinking in that way?
Yeah, they may. As I said before, there's kind of, in the tradition I come from, at least the last 30, 40 years, is free of guilt. And so I think we just have to keep reminding ourselves. When I was younger, I had a lot of guilt. Now I have virtually no guilt. When it comes up a little bit, it's like, whoa, where did that come from? I remember that from Flash, where do we say Flash from the past or something? I don't have it much at all. So I've been working on it. All these things help reduce that, make you more comfortable in your skin. I think these things do help reduce guilt. They don't do it overnight. And in a way that is self-compassion that you're both bringing up. In a way, we don't call it self-compassion necessarily, but it is self-compassion. All these things to reduce the obstacles, they're taking care of ourselves. Okay? Of course, taking care of others. Because we'll be able to be more available for others. We're taking care of ourselves. Okay? So as a doctor, I'm a medical doctor. I think Professor Chen mentioned that. I'm a medical doctor. To me, this is good health. Good health is not just limited to our body. It's limited to it includes our emotions and our thinking, our attitudes, our motivation. All this plays into, because there's very good research now. In fact, some of it coming out of Madison, Wisconsin, Professor Davidson, is in the field of epigenetics. So initially a lot of the work, which has been done in many places, not just Wisconsin, is showing that these positive mental states improve our immune system. Okay? And one of the markers they often look at is interleukin. It's a blood hormone in the blood. It's a chemical in the blood. Interleukin 6, IL-6. A lot of work on that. And that's kind of a signature or a measure for our immune system. And they show that IL-6 levels increase with meditation over time. Okay. And so now what they're beginning to look at, and it's in the early stage, just pilot stuff. It came out very successful, and now they're moving it forward, is epigenetics. So epigenetics is all about, turning on, turning off. Okay. Used to be, what was it, when we were young, tuning in, tuning out, that was a drug culture, that was This is turning on, turning off. And it means genetic expression of protein. So a segment of the gene will be activated, usually deacetylation process, chemical processes that turn on an area, coding area of the gene to code and make protein. So the idea here is that the traditional concept is the causes, for that. When certain areas of the gene turn on, make protein, when they turn off, stop making protein, are determined by local physical phenomena, very local, with probably less than a millimeter. So I don't know the actual size, very small. It's temperature, it's pressure, it's pH. Okay? But now they're finding that meditation affects this process, such that we turn on and so-called healthy genes, probably mediated through the immune system, maybe other endocrine systems in the body. Okay? And turns off unhealthy proteins that create more disease or take us away from a healthy state. So this work is coming out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison in its early stages, but their pilot work that they did was, I think they published it, I didn't see it, I think they published it, but it came out very good and other people on that. So I think a lot of the stuff we're talking about is self-compassion, but we don't call it that. It's taking care of ourselves. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you, Professor, for your sharing. To me, it seems that compassion plays a very important role in social interaction. And I think that different people may invest different levels of compassion in a relationship with others, especially for the in a marriage settings. What's your view about the incongruency between? Yes.
It doesn't break.
Yeah, I'm not married, I'm a monk.
Not bad for
I'm joking with you. I'm not joking, I am not married. But that wasn't the answer to your question. It's a very good question. Very good question. Where we move in terms of compassion or kindness is, initially we want something back. We say to our partner, our wife or husband or girlfriend or boyfriend or lover, we say, I love you. Okay? And what we often mean is, yes, I love you, but I want you to love me too. That's kind of hidden there, right? I want something in return. Okay? I'll love you, I'll be kind, I'll be compassionate to you, but you better do the same thing to me. Okay? Otherwise it's not going to work. This is common. I think most of us have this in close, intimate relationships particularly, but maybe other relationships at work or friends or whatever. Okay, that's step one. That's kind of the first stage, if you will, of compassion and kindness, is doing it for others, but we have a secondary agenda. We want something back. We want them to smile. We want them to say thank you. Or maybe we want some kind of a gift. Recently I gave somebody a gift, and it was kind of from my heart. I thought very much. There might have been some secondary agenda. It was a lovely gift, and you know what they said to me? I love gifts. Saying, keep giving. Because, anyway, I can't. Anyway. We all have that. We give, but we want something in return. Okay? As we grow and mature, we can begin to give and love more unconditionally, no strings attached, or less strings attached. Okay, I'm going to give, and I recognize you're in a lot of pain, your life is all screwed up. I still love you. I don't expect you to smile to say thank you. So we move slowly in that direction. And why? What's the rationale? Because we recognize that we're all the same in wanting happiness and not wanting pain. So that other person that may not be giving me what I need, what I want, I recognize he or she is in pain. Okay? So it's not easy. Not easy. And a lot of divorces or separations end because we don't feel we're getting it back. We're giving, but we're not receiving back. Okay? So it's not easy stuff. But it's possible to go in that direction. Now, you have to be careful. Another little red flag here. We have to take care of ourselves. Sometimes we give, and other people take advantage of us. Okay? And then we end up getting really hurt. So we have to be careful. That doesn't help us, and actually it doesn't help the other person who is hurting us, because they create negative karma. So they're going to have some negative experiences later on because of that. So we didn't help them, and of course we didn't help ourselves. So we have to take care of ourselves. Sometimes we have to be a little tough. Sometimes we have to be more tough love, you know that concept? Yeah. It's good motivation, but we have to be a little strong and kind of protect ourselves if someone's taking too much advantage and it's hurting us. Okay. Now, at some level, we don't feel that we're being taken advantage of at all. And this involves the emptiness that the professor that left that was bringing up, the emptiness. Because when we can recognize that we're not who we think we are, then we take things much less personally. Because there's kind of no one here to take it personal. I mean, there is, we're still here, but not the way we normally think of ourselves. Okay? And that's the wisdom. When we begin to understand that more and more, we're able to give more and more. It doesn't matter what other people do to us. Okay? And so the example is the Buddha, before he became enlightened, was a tigress. Oh, no, sorry. Before he became a Buddha, he was a highly advanced being, and he saw a tigress, a mother tiger, and she was trying to feed her 5 cubs. But she didn't have food. She was very thin, couldn't make milk. And so the 5 baby tiger cubs were dying. So he was moved by tremendous compassion when he saw this, and he cut off a piece of his body, flesh, muscle, and gave it to the tigress so she could eat, make milk, and save and feed her babies. No, and then of course he died. Right? But joyfully, no pain, 0 pain. He was fully in compassion because of the wisdom, because he understood deeply the wisdom and elegance. We're not at that stage, so please don't do that. That's not the message. Okay? But that's kind of where we're going eventually. So we see the wisdom, we don't take anything personal, we just offer everything joyfully, not feeling abused. Stepwise, some of the questions from before. We don't get there tomorrow. Take little steps, little steps, little steps.
Excuse me.
Yes, please, sorry.
Well, I have 2 questions. The first one, I feel really peaceful when I listen to you. I'm kind of sitting next to monks or nuns. So how can I kind of make other people feel peaceful when they are near me or they talk to me?
Yeah. Well, come on with me. I mean, you've got a small body, I've got a big pocket. Come out of my pocket, just stay with me. Just practice these things, do these things again. Recharge your bodies. Recharge yourself, not your body. Recharge yourself. Go sit by the monks and the nuns sometimes when your energy's maybe a little low, recharge. Go to talks. Go on the internet. There's a lot of wonderful stuff on the internet. DalaiLama.com if you're a fan of His Holiness. We have this Altruism Medicine Institute. www.altruismmedicine, it's a .org. Come to my Facebook site. I put a lot of this stuff on my Facebook. Barry Kerzin, a public figure, so we don't chat there, so it's more educational. But people can write messages, and I try when I have time to answer them. I'm usually successful. If they're reasonable kind of messages, which they usually are. Sometimes people get on there and they have some other axe to grind, I just leave it, like that, I think. And this takes time, so patience is so important. Patience and perseverance. If we give up easily, we meditate for a few days and we say, I'm not enlightened, I didn't change all my bad habits. That's a very unrealistic expectation. So we have to be patient and we have to persevere. Keep doing it. Don't give up. Those are very important parts. And if we do that, then next time I come in 6 months or maybe 12 months or something, I'll ask you how you doing, and you'll probably tell me. You'll probably tell me, well, I've been trying, and you know what? I see a little bit of benefit here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, second question.
Please.
I'm kind of a little bit sensitive. So when
I'm sorry, a little bit
sensitive.
Sensitive, yeah.
Yes.
Join the club. I think we're all like that. Many of us are like that.
Yeah, the thing because whenever I talk to someone, I can immediately feel what they are feeling.
Right.
Or someone like feel uneasy,
right.
feel insecure.
Yep.
And I feel the same thing.
Yep. We call that empathy.
Yeah.
Feeling what other people feel. So empathy is a step. If we stop at empathy, we end up burning out, just like you said. What's your name, please?
My name's He.
He. Yeah. Just like he said, he. If you always feel the way other people feel, you take it on yourself, and often it's negative stuff, insecurity, fear, anger, whatever it is. And then, we don't know how to process that. So it can be overwhelming and we can burn out. So I like to step beyond empathy into compassion. And compassion, of course we feel a little bit of what the other person's feeling. So sometimes the Dalai Lama, His Holiness, says it's kind of love, but it's tainted with pain or suffering. So a little bit we feel the other person's pain or suffering, and we're not overwhelmed. We don't own it. Okay? So there's a little shift, in terms of a big shift in the feeling tone, going from empathy to compassion. And that's a way of taking care of ourselves, if you will, self-compassion, because, it's us that are trying to be better people and help other people, so we have to be healthy. That's very, very important. We need a strong, healthy constitution, physically, mentally. So that's really important, of course, for ourselves, but also to be a kind of a vehicle to help others. You're very welcome. Thank you. Good. Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah, I want to say that about my practice, because when I was in a retreat, I practiced with Sayadaw U Tejaniya in Myanmar. So when I was in retreat, my mind is completely in a different mode. It's like a yogi mode, very light, very peaceful. But everyone around me is meditators, but when I'm back, and the objects are not so peaceful, and especially when I meet a person like my father who is full of defilements, angry, it's very difficult to lose the awareness and also the wisdom. So I just want to ask, have you experienced that, like practice in daily life and practice with teacher in retreat, and how we can balance in our daily lives?
Yes, what you say is exactly true. True for me, true for everybody. So we have to keep recharging our battery, go back to retreats or other ways of getting back into that kind of more balanced, healthy, happy state. And the more we do this stuff, the more it starts to influence our life beyond the meditation, beyond the retreat situation. It starts to color the rest of our life. And eventually, the Buddha is both meditating and non-meditating at the same time. Okay? So all these things infuse his or her life all the time. Okay? So we just have to keep practicing. I think there's no real shortcuts. Sometimes people ask for shortcuts. I have a busy life, and I have kids, I'm a PhD student, and, I have these and these responsibilities, which is it's a lot. And then they say, but so give me the shortcut. And His Holiness sometimes cries. And then tells the story of the rabbi who just sat, and on his bottom end, and he stick calluses just because he sat practicing. So it takes a lot of hard work, and just keep doing it, and the results will come. They'll come slowly. Please don't be focusing on the results, because then you get into a trap. You may not meet your expectations. You feel, failure, and lots of negative stuff. You don't need to do that. Just keep practicing. And so that's wonderful that you go to retreats. During the retreat, you have these wonderful experiences. And slowly, you begin to come out into the rest of your life. And you'll start hugging your father. Please.
I'm not sure whether this is the right question.
There are no right or wrong questions. You don't even need to say it.
How can you measure compassion? Like, do you have it or you don't have it, or is it in a scale?
Yeah, I think it is on a scale, correct. Some people are more prone or easier to practice compassion than others. I don't think it's an either or, you either have it or you don't, okay? But some people are just easier to express and to feel compassion than others. That's true. It's trainable. It's been demonstrated with a lot of great research now. We can train people to be more compassionate. Measures. That's a really good question, because that's a research question. How do we measure it? So we can put people in situations by showing them something on the screen. A very positive kind of loving situation. versus something that's very harmful, very scary, very negative, and kind of measure their response through whatever measures we want to use. There's some good research that I think might have come out of Wisconsin. I'm not sure where it came from. It uses the TSST, the Trier Social Stress Test. And my psychology friends tell me that that's something that's used sometimes in research in psychology. The Trier, T-R-I-E-R, I believe is what you spell it, Social Stress Test. And one of the things they do is they put a microphone in somebody's. They say, okay, now you speak to these 1,000 people. So that's the kind of thing they do. But first, they take two groups. One of them, they give them a lot of compassion training. The others, some kind of placebo, right? They don't use compassion training. And then they stress them, okay? And there are many other ways to do this, but one way is this TSST, Trier Social Stress Test. And they put a microphone in front and they say, maybe, I don't know exactly how it works because I don't use this, but maybe they put a screen in front of them, 1,000 people sitting in front of them, or something like that, picture, video. I'm not sure what they do, but they give them a microphone and they say, now, we want you to say a few words to these 1,000 people about such and such. So they say, they see and then they measure who's more stressed, a group of people that have the compassion training. So that's one thing that I noticed. You can check that and you'll see it in the literature. Other measures, I'm not so good on these. A lot of the psychology literature has these kind of things. There are, blink, it's called a blink test, where you're shown a series of letters and numbers, and you have to pick out, mostly it's letters, but there are a couple of numbers, and you have to pick out, after the number, what is the letter. They come real quick. That's another measure. And when we do meditation, the concept is that our minds are more clear, more open, we have a broader perspective, and therefore we can pick out quick things in our visual response. Because of the more clarity of our mind, we can do that task better. That's another thing that sometimes I've seen now. I don't know. We have to talk to research people now and see what kind of measures they're using. Those are some that they use. In life sleep, what measures would they take? Not those. Also, sometimes questionnaires are valuable. It's first person data, maybe not quite as powerful, but you have a lot of subjects. And just ask people. You don't say compassion, but you talk often about these friends of compassion. Before and after, did you find yourself the same level of jealousy and anger, these kind of things? And then more sophisticated questions in that area. Yeah, that's all I can do that right now. Yes, please.
Thanks for your
Yes, please.
Thanks for sharing, and I just would like to invite you to talk more about the forgiveness and the gratitude and compassion, because we know that when we talk about forgiveness, actually it always include two parties, the victim party and the offender party. So if we would like to see the whole picture, maybe we can put them in an interaction relationship, especially in marriage or family. So in your mind, what is the relationship between the forgiveness, compassion, and the gratitude? In the small units, that's like 2 or 3 people, the victim party and the offender party, how they interact?
Right, yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful question. Let me first talk about forgiveness. From the Buddhist understanding, forgiveness is a one-way activity. It doesn't involve both parties. You can invite the other person, that's your choice, based on skill and meaning. But the primary emphasis is on letting go of the hurt, yourself. And that's a solo activity. It usually doesn't involve the other family member or spouse. Okay, you do it. But the idea is if you're successful in doing this, then the other person will they'll feel it, they'll notice it. Okay, and they may bring it up. Or it may allow them to reduce their hurt in that kind of mutual hurt thing, you know, we got angry at each other, laid into each other, which we all do in close relationships, marriages, you know, friendship, partnerships, or children, parents, we do that. And so it allows you to let go. And then that gives the license that the other person feels it. You may not have expressed it verbally, but they notice it. And then they have the option to let it go. So how do you work on the, we say it again. It's Tibetan. It means wishing you long life. Say is life, and rinpo is long. So when someone sneezes, we wish them long life. So say it again. She's busy. Say it, long life. It's the Tibetan expression when someone sneezes. Wishing them long life. Say is life, and rinpo is long. That's just what they say when someone sneezes. Wishing you long life. So how do you practice this compassion? That's the question. If it is more of a solo activity, what do you do? So first thing you have to do is recognize it. We recognize these grudges or these hurts that we've stored. And then we just kind of look at them. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just looking at them with the attitude of, okay, I'm ready to let them go. I've had them now for 6 months. I've had them for 100 years, so I'm ready to let go of them, okay? And just that sometimes is enough. Sometimes it's not enough. So you have to kind of then, in your mind, in your heart, in solo activity, you have to then forgive the other person. So how do you do that? So what we often do is make a distinction between the person and his or her actions. So what we are actually forgiving here is the person, not the actions. It's a subtle distinction. It helps because the person may not have wanted to, be involved with the situation that made us feel hurt. Maybe they were just reacting defensively because they felt hurt. Okay, so they may not have wanted it to happen. So we're not forgiving their action. Okay, but we're forgiving the person because the person inside is good, is healthy, is compassionate, loving. And also as a product of her or his environment. So maybe their upbringing was such that they were very frightened in certain situations. And we may not have known that as a spouse. And that situation may have arisen, whereas the other person, the other spouse, is reacting out of fear because they feel threatened. Though from our perspective, we didn't feel we were threatened. But it was something to do with what happened in your family. That's often the case. So forgiving the person, solo activity, not necessarily the actions, those are hard. So that's kind of the way we approach forgiveness from a Buddhist perspective. Now, if you want to share that with a person, of course you can. But you don't have to. You decide which is best. Sometimes, even if we don't share it, as I said before, the other person can feel it. When a situation comes up around that stuff, and you're not reacting the way you used to, you kind of think, what's wrong? Is he asleep? Or is something's changed? You begin to think, no, actually. You can say, there's nothing angry. And then you can, if you want, you share it with them. Okay, so then gratitude. Gratitude is a beautiful way to live. It's just to recognize the kindness in others. We tend to forget that. Okay? All of us have beautiful clothing on today. Where did we get the clothing? It was a gift, or maybe we bought it in the store, right? So where did it come? How did it get in the store? Well, it came from a factory, maybe in Shenzhen, Guangzhou, somewhere. Actually, the factories are, I think, the textiles are outside of Shanghai. So it came from somewhere in a factory, involving thousands of workers. Okay, their families. Okay, then it was transported from maybe, for example, Shanghai to some place where it has to be packaged and everything. And then it's distributed to stores. And maybe it's sent here to. I just learned about the store called Prada. Prada. It's in Kowloon. I'll tell you the story in a minute. And then you go and you buy it, okay? So many other people are involved in just the shirt or the sweater or the blouse we're wearing, okay? So to recognize their kindness. In the cup of tea that we drink, and the animals, had to do harvesting and farming and everything for the tea, okay? And the packaging and transport, who built the planes, and the big trucks to transport it, huge factories, lots of people involved. So think about the kindness from everything in our daily lives, our food, our clothing, the tables where I'm sitting on, you're working on, your chairs that you're sitting on. How'd you get here? The MTR, took a lot of people to build the MTR, the HKU, right? Et cetera, et cetera. And then lastly, think about the people that we don't like. Because if we reframe that, they become teachers. How's that work? We all kind of agree, or at least I agree, that you all get angry sometimes. I make that assumption. I think it's probably true. Get angry sometimes. But we don't like it. So what can we do about it? You can read about it in a textbook, you won't change your behavior. Very difficult. You have to be kind of there when you get angry to work with it. And who helps us with that process?
People who make you angry. the people who breathe anger into you.
Yeah, the people that are in our face are so-called enemies. Exactly. So they become our teachers. Now, you don't have to tell them this, because if you do, they might not take it well, may cause more problems. But you can feel and understand them as a teacher. Teaching me how to first recognize our anger, and secondly, slowly change it into patience, tolerance, and eventually into love and compassion. Where you hug your father. I don't know the relationship with your father. I took too many words there. Sorry. But we hug the people that we have trouble with. We come to that place in our heart where we can do that. And we're not necessarily forgiving their actions. So we're not becoming a victim in that sense. Victimization. We still stay strong. We're spiritual warriors. The work we're doing that we're talking about takes tremendous strength and courage. Look at Mahatma Gandhi. Tiny body, he kicked almost single-handedly the British out of India. They've been there 300 years. Non-violent. His whole thing was ahimsa, non-violence. Okay. Look at Mother Teresa. Incredible, another tiny lady, the body is tiny, but so much courage and power and strength. She would pick up the people dying and lying in their own excrement in the streets in Calcutta and bring them into her kind of makeshift clinic, Sisters of Charity, clean them, clothe them, bathe them, feed them, give them love. This takes incredible courage and strength. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the same. So strong and powerful. It's all love and compassion. Okay? So, people like that, they live and breathe and eat gratitude. They're just so gracious and have so much gratitude for everyone around who's helped them, who's alive, who they can help, all these things. So the more gratitude we can put in our life, the healthier we become. And when we do these things we've been talking about, gratitude comes more naturally, slowly comes more naturally. I think I touched on most of the points you mentioned.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, please.
Thank you for your sharing. So I'm Rebecca, and like as what you have said just now, people are good deep down, but then some people are just like intrinsically very angry all the time.
Yes.
And it might be due to their like upbringing and like their family conditions, or how they were treated when they were young. And I'd just like to know like what's the first step of like approaching these people or like talking to these people so that we can help them in a positive way?
Right. Yeah, great question. Because I think we all have angry people in our lives, and how can we negotiate that in a more healthy way? Now, the first thing is to stay away. You don't want to be in the face of an angry person, even if it's our lover, our spouse, our girlfriend, boyfriend. If they're in an angry mood, stay away. Give them space. Okay? If you rush in, I'm going to help you with your anger. Well, they're going to let you have it, usually. Okay, so be smart. Stay away. Okay, first step. And you don't abandon them. I didn't say abandon them. Just give them room if they're angry. Let them settle down, quiet down. So they're, at some point they'll be more rational. And then, it depends on your relationship with the person, how close you are, how much trust there is. But if you have a close relationship, if it's a parent, a child, if it's a spouse, or someone in a long-term relationship, you can bring it up. In a calm moment, okay? Not when they're real angry, but you can bring it up. I love you very much, but you seem to get angry. And I don't know what to do. And see kind of what their response is. Maybe they're in a guilt mode. They'll say, I'm really sorry. I had a rough upbringing. I really apologize. I didn't mean it personally. They may say this, if you have a trusting, kind of close relationship. And they may even say, when I get angry, let me know. Or they may say, stay away. And they may give you some guidance. You can ask them. But do it skillfully, and do it in a calm moment, okay? And do it in a loving way, not putting them down. Oh, you're such a terrible spouse. Why did I ever marry you? You're always angry. Well, that's going to inflame, obviously. So you have to have that kind of mutual respect, and in that kind of trusting or loving way, if it's a close person, family member, spouse, whatever. So you can bring it up. And see how they respond. See how open they are. They may not be open, and they may tell you verbally or non-verbally, directly or indirectly, don't go there. Respect it. Respect it. You can bring it up again at another time. Maybe they weren't ready then. But then they know, if you bring it up in a very neutral way or a very loving way, not in a put down, you're not judging them as a bad person. Okay? But you bring it up out of kind of respect, and maybe love, then they feel that, they know that. And then at some point they might be open to the discussion. So be careful. Don't rush in. It's liable to backfire. But be there. The other thing that's very important, sometimes in difficult situations, just be there. Silently. Show up. You don't have to say anything. And the other person knows you're there. Of course they know you're there. And if you're there, really neutral or positive, loving way, you respect them. They may not be able to tell you. Maybe later they'll tell you. They may not be able to tell you. Just be there for people that have heard it. It means a lot. Sometimes we say, I can't go around Aunt or Grandma so-and-so is dying because I'm frightened, I'm nervous, I don't know what to say. I tell you, don't say anything. Just go there and be loving. Just people really appreciate that when they're in trouble. Someone's there for them, with a positive attitude.
What if they're more distant? For example, for criminals, is there any way that we can help them?
I'm sorry, what kind of distance? What relationship?
Criminals or people who commit crimes.
Criminal, yeah. Be real careful. If they're violent people, be very careful. I do some work in prisons in Japan with adolescents, boys, young men, young women. And, in Japan, they have a pretty, I imagine it's the same in China, but I don't know. They have a pretty tough penal system. So, we gather 80 girls, young women, actually. Many of them, they're adolescents. They gather them in a big kind of it's a sports, gym, like a gym. And there's people all around. And they're not there with the Uzis, AK-47s, but they're around. And so if anything breaks out, they'll be right there. But most of the young women, they're not violent. They're there for, they made a little mistake, prostitution, drugs, petty theft, that kind of stuff. I think out of the 80, one or two that have committed murder, heavy duty. But most of them are for less violent or non-violent crimes. So you have to know that. When I was a medical student, a resident. I was in my residence in Churchill. I did a 2-month rotation on the jail ward at the Los Angeles County Hospital, massive government hospital. And they had, the 13th floor was the jail ward. So the ordinary elevators went up to, I think, 19 or 20, but there was no 13. And you couldn't press the button for 13 on that elevator because it didn't stop at 13. So you had to go down to the other end of the building, and there was a private elevator. You required a key or somebody to help you. And then it only went to the 13th floor. Yeah. And the doors opened, and there were these thick glass, several things of them. These were heavy-duty criminals, some of them. And, then all the police and everything. You had to be escorted. And I was interviewing a man who was in for a murder, okay? And I was told that he was a paranoid schizophrenic and no regret or remorse for killing. So I was frightened, and I had to interview him. So first thing I did, and I was told this, I sat near the door and I closed it. Second thing is there's windows and the guards are watching closely. Thirdly, I know he doesn't have any violent weapons. These are hard. This is the extremes of all criminals. Most are not like this. But, I had to protect myself. But then I talked to him, and it was actually, we had a love, I think, for about an hour or something. And he really opened up about who he was and a little bit what he had done. And, that was my job. And then I slowly got into the medical side, the paranoid schizophrenic thing. I tried to develop at least best from that person. It wasn't easy to do this. Some mutual respect and trust. Okay. They're people. Just treat them as people. Yeah. But also be careful if they have a real violent history. Be real careful to protect yourself. Have others help you if you're in that situation. But we're not usually in that situation. But some people, probably there's guns in the homes. In America, it's a lot. So many guns in the homes. And so there is a potential for violence a lot when people get angry. It's very, very unfortunate. I think a big mistake.
You mentioned that meditation is a skillful tool that can nurture compassion. Okay, then I have questions about the meditation. That is the distinctions between, or the relationship between the samatha practice and also the practice. Yes. For the first one, it's related to concentration. The second one, the later one, will be related to insight. Then I would like to know that this concentration, the samatha, would naturally and also be sufficient and also the necessary conditions for insight. Is it?
Lead to compassion.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Do you all understand the question? I don't really know. Shifang.
From the Department of Psychology.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, it's a great question. Shifang mentioned that there are two types of meditation. One is where we just concentrate our mind on some object like the breath or other things. The other kind is where we develop some kind of deeper wisdom insight, vipassana. Okay? And her question was, the first kind, shamatha, where we're just making our mind more like a laser, does it naturally lead to compassion? The answer is no. Okay? So, my advice to people that only practice to become like a laser, if they want to be a more rounded, whole, healthy human being, is to also practice compassion. Okay? I know people that have been doing this all their life for many, many years, and they become kind of narrow focused. And they don't have as much more. Okay? So it's important to balance. And that's why we say the two wings, the soaring bird, which is a kind of an analogy or an example for Buddhism, Buddhist practice, Buddhist way of living, is wisdom and compassion. So the insight of vipassana, or the insight of stability and clarity, which is about shamatha, concentration meditation, has to be balanced. And I'll give you an example. The first time I met personally His Holiness the Dalai Lama was about 26 years ago. We were at a conference in California. It was the second Mind Life conference. 20 people total, 20, maybe 25. That include the camera people, the secretaries and the host, 20 team, small group, few scientists and another group. And I was there also. And so when we had a break for lunch, I asked the secretary if I could have just a few words with his colleagues. He approved. And he came and was ready to walk up the stairs to take his lunch. And I asked him, I said, Your Holiness, I'd like to do a retreat on emptiness, Buddhist wisdom. And he looked at me and he thought, wow. And he was silent for a while. And then he pointed the finger and very sternly he said, Shunyata and bodhicitta 50-50. Bodhicitta is compassion, it's the universal compassion. And shunyata is the emptiness, the wisdom, the insight, the vipassana. He said that I need to do both equally. And he walked up the stairs. And it was like this hot, like lightning or a poke or something went right through my heart. It's like, wow. And I still have that strong feeling that guides me in my practice. 26 years later.
I have follow-up questions to that angry person question.
No right, no wrong.
Okay. Do you believe that there's always a reason for to meet certain people? Like, for example, if you come across a very angry person, would that be like a reminder to you that maybe you're suppressing your anger, to look into that area?
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, I'm not sure that it's always, because karma is a funny thing, it's complicated. It kind of means that, much of what our experience is a result of what we've done before. Notice I said much of our experience. Some people take karma to be deterministic, that we have no free will. That's not true. We do have some free will. Now, there's a tremendous influence or momentum from our previous actions, but we do have free will. So, yes, I believe that it is kind of from our past actions that we are in certain situations and meet certain people. Though we do have some say in the matter, at the first point. The second point, the real importance of your question is, can we use that in a way that helps us learn or train to work with our own? We kind of mirror it. These mirror neurons kind of idea. If the person's angry, we can help mirror our own. Oh yes, I also am angry, and I'm kind of making a commitment to myself to work with this, to become a healthier, member of society and healthier person. Okay? So I think that's a wonderful way to kind of reframe when we're around an angry person, rather than just reacting, in a negative way. To say, oh yeah, maybe there's a reason here, and maybe it helps me look at my own anger and my own commitment to work on my anger, to start to soften and harm. That's beautiful, very nice. That's part of this whole system of what we call in Tibetan lojong. Lo is mind, and jong is to train, or to study, or to train, to learn. So it's in this tradition of mind training.
It's about what you said about karma and about past actions. Do past actions include past actions from past lives?
Yeah, if you from the Buddhist perspective, definitely yes. Because our life, if you will, is a continuum, and it's the mind that continues. The body, at age, whatever age we die, it's finished, right? But the mind continues. And so there's a mental continuum. Yeah. Now that I should have said this earlier, before you leave, if you want to give some feedback to your, the head of the department, to Professor Cecilia Chan, or to your big boss, John Burns, the Dean of Social Sciences, or whatever, wherever you are in the university, send feedback, because that helps us grow this program. Thanks. And the end, the question was?
About karma.
Right, yeah. So there's a mental continuum, and the karma is just actions that help, when we talk about mental continuum, we talk about, it's like beads on a string, a rosary, a moment, okay? And each bead is analogous to a mental event, one moment of mind. And they're strung together, with no beginning. That's the Buddhist concept of life. And what keeps those beads on my particular string, as opposed to your particular mental continuum string, is karma. It's our previous actions. And they go back before this life. Okay? And all they are is actions. We're doing them all the time, moment to moment. They're mental actions, thoughts, feelings, emotions, intuition, all that stuff. They're words that we say, okay? Either out verbally or sometimes silently. And they're physical actions of our body. All those things have either a positive tone, a negative tone, and here negative and positive means harm or benefit. So they're kind of beneficial in tone, or they're harmful in tone, or they're neutral. Okay? And those things have influence on what happens to us in the future. So that's kind of karma. And yes, they believe if you're open to multiple lifetimes, yes, they come from not only this particular lifetime, but previous ones too. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think there was another question.
Yeah, Doctor. Actually, meditation is, in my perspective, is a good thing. And I would like to know more about your meditation. Like your meditation, yes? Like you will see pictures, or you will get wordings, or anything.
Yeah. You know what I'd like to do with you? I forgot. You reminded me. Let's meditate together. Okay? Let's do a meditation together. My personal meditation involves about 3 hours a day, most of it in the morning, some at night, a little bit during the day. And it's a variety of things. Compassion is part of it. So-called vipassana, insight or wisdom is part of it. Visualization is part of it. As a Buddhist, as a representation of certain qualities of the Buddha, like compassion and wisdom. Some mantra recitation is part of it. So there are a number of things. Some concentration, shamatha is part of it, to focus the mind. So it's quite a bunch of things. Let's meditate, okay? Let's do a foundational, basic, following the breath, shamatha, concentration meditation. So we'll sit up straight, keep your mouths closed, we'll breathe naturally through our nose, eyes open, head up. So turn off all your devices, please. Put them on silent mode. Okay? It's often around 12 these things start beeping. So we'll sit up straight. Heads will be up, your eyes open, glancing down like this. Okay? So eyes kind of glancing down like that. Like this. Eyes glancing down. Okay? And we'll just focus our mind on the bottom of the nose. That's all we'll do. Okay. With our hands, we put the left hand down, like this, and the right hand on top. Okay. And the thumbs pointing up like this. Okay, like this. So left hand down, right hand on top, thumbs pointing up, and just rest that in your lap. Rest it in your lap. Drop your shoulders and back straight. Okay. If your laptop's open, you might want to just shut it. And you're distracting. Okay. And then your mind will probably get distracted. You'll think about, where am I going to go for lunch? What's my next class? What's my next activity? What did he say about that? I shouldn't have said that to my boyfriend or my husband, or all those thoughts and feelings will come up. Those are distractions. Just tell yourself distraction and bring your mind back to focusing on the breath at the bottom of the nose. You don't have to follow it all the way in and all the way out. Just park your concentration at the bottom of your nose. Okay? It's a free parking spot. Stay there as long as you want. Okay? You don't get a ticket. Okay? We'll do it for about 5 minutes. I'll meditate too. I'll take a chair. And every time you get distracted, just come on back to the breath. That's part of meditation. That's mind training. Please meditate. So that was about between 5 and 10 minutes. taste of meditation together. You may not be feeling like you meditated, but I want to tell you something you did. So those of you that are interested, get familiar. Those of you that are already familiar, get more familiar. Do it every day. Do it in the morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a nice class. And if you'd like to give feedback, please do. It helps us expand our program. And if you want to come to more of the things that I'm doing, we're nearly finished. I've been here almost a month. I have another week or two. You can contact Mr. Sampson, who's in the MEHU, the Medical Humanities, Medical Ethics and Humanities Unit at the medical school. Okay, Sampson. He's my TA. If you see some of the posters, his contact is on some of the posters you'll see around here in this event. You can ask him about the other programs.
You didn't finish your product story.
Sorry?
Your product story. You were wanting to tell us your product story?
My personal story?
No, your product.
Product, sorry, yeah. But. So last year I was here, and I was going in the evening to Kowloon. Some friends were taking me to see two wellness. And we passed by a store. And there were a bunch of people, in glass doors, a bunch of people in line outside, 7 in the evening. I said to my friends, why can't they go in? And I noticed the name of the store was Prada. And what they told me was, they take them in one by one, or a few people at a time. I said, well, what's the story? They said, handbags for ladies. I said, oh, are they nice handbags? They said, well, I don't know, but they're very expensive. I said, well, how much do they cost? They said, well, some of them go up to 10,000 US. I said, what? 10? They said, yes. And many of the people are buying 10. I said, no, come on, you're kidding. They said, seriously. I said, what's happening here? And then I asked other friends later, I gave the story, I said, why? It turns out many of them were mainland Chinese, and they were coming for different reasons. Different people gave me different reasons. Some were coming from a little bit poor village, maybe, and not poor, but a little poor village, and they were buying 10 for their friends. So 1 for them, 10 and 9 for their families or friends. Others said they're doing it for business. They're cheaper here than they are in China, so they can sell and make a profit. Other people said they're for gifts. Gifts. And then some people qualified what gift meant. Sometimes expecting something in China. So this is a true story. That's my story with the Prada handbag. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.